Here, Chris Clark, Wednesday episode of the show. GC Live, as always, brought to you by Clint Hammond of Movement Mortgage, clint.hammond.com, 803-771-6933. Again, he's Chris. I'm Wes. Shout out to Clint, as always, for being our presenting sponsor. Simple version is you want to buy a house, call Clint. He'll help walk you through the rest of that entire process. We're going to give this South Carolina versus Auburn men's basketball showdown tonight. Two top 15 teams. South Carolina just barely outside of the top 10 of the latest AP poll. 8:30 tonight, SEC Network. We're going to give this the football treatment. And with that, we actually have a special guest here who joined us already today. If you missed it on 107.5, it is Justin Hokinson. Chris, I mean, the guys at Auburn on three, I feel like, they do a fantastic job recruiting football and basketball as well. I mean, I would almost dare say not that it is similar paths to their coaching careers, but we're sort of seeing at Auburn kind of a football-first school, what can happen if you can have some men's basketball success. And their fan base under Bruce Pearl has just been completely bought in, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, man. Bruce Pearl has actually done this on the basketball front at a couple different schools. He did it at Tennessee. He's done it now at Auburn, where he's injected life into the basketball program and made those programs really good. And he also did it quickly, in terms of the product on the court and just the kind of energy, the revitalization of the programs. And Wes actually is somebody that I point to as an example of, and I know there's mixed opinions on Bruce Pearl, right? But the results, right, of, hey, you can turn it around. If you make the right hire, if you do it the right way, you can turn it around, and it doesn't have to take 5 years, in order to do it. And we're kind of seeing that with Lamont Paris, right? We don't know what the long-term trajectory looks like with him or what the long-term results will be, but the trajectory does look good. And he has certainly taken this South Carolina program from one that was in the doldrums very much, not very good in terms of record. The excitement was very meh. Now, excitement is the highest we've seen in years, and the on-court product is really good, and he's done it very quickly, right? So, fascinating matchup, very important matchup. The matchup that Bruce Pearl, he said basically, hey, if we want to win the SEC, we got to beat South Carolina, and he just kind of bottom-lined it. This is a game that I think we're looking at, Wes, maybe similar to the Tennessee game that South Carolina ended up winning on the road, but Auburn has been excellent at home. They've won 6 straight in this series. They're the only team in the SEC unbeaten at home this year, and they've won 15 straight games inside Neville Arena. They've been absolutely outstanding at home, not only this year, but as of late. So, tough matchup for South Carolina. Tough matchup for Auburn because the Gamecocks are a really good team as well.
Yeah, and there's a couple of different reasons for that on both ends, that it's going to be potentially tough night for either side. Auburn currently favored by 11.5. That is, I would say, just a compliment to who they are and who they are at home. ESPN's matchup predictor, their basketball, what we would call the FPI, tracking things in football, 89.7% Auburn, the favorite here. And that, I know that's all. I do think it's a little bit funny. No offense, guys, when people get mad about what an analytics set, like that's all math and whatever they're just plugging into this algorithm, basically. But still, does South Carolina have a better than 10.3% chance to win this game? Absolutely, in my opinion. And generally, 11.5 is not a small number, but it is not obviously an astronomical number either. So I am a little bit surprised that the sort of matchup predictor for ESPN isn't a little bit tighter than that. But anyway, let's go ahead. Let's go out to Justin. This is pre-recorded, but it was just from a couple hours ago. And like Chris just mentioned, pay attention to what he says about how they have done at home and the sellouts they have had at homes. Much smaller arena it's not apples to apples, much smaller arena than Colonial Life Arena. They went the route of modern, fresh, smaller arena and making it super nice. It has paid off for them in terms of atmosphere. But let's go ahead. Let's go out to Justin. This is about 10 minutes, and then Chris and I will come back and chop it up after that.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you. Wrapping up today's show. Big matchup tonight on the hardwood. Men's team heading down to Auburn to take on the number 13 Tigers. Tip off at 8:30. Pre-game coverage starting right here on the game at 8 o'clock. Joining us now to discuss this matchup from Auburn Live, the on-3 site for the Auburn Tigers, is Justin Hokinson. Justin, first of all, thanks so much for taking your time this morning. This Auburn team is a different kind of animal in Neville Arena, undefeated at home this season. Closest game they played was that 11-point win over Texas A&M a little bit earlier on in conference play. What is it about that home environment that this Bruce Pearl squad seems to thrive in?
Yeah, they are a different team. They just feed off the energy. I mean, it's become a really good home atmosphere. They've got 52 straight home sellouts now. And so the way it's sort of constructed and built, I mean, it's sold out, it's packed. Everybody's kind of on top of you. The roof's kind of low, so it keeps a lot of the noise in. So it's just a loud venue. And the way that Bruce Pearl's teams play, which is trying to create some havoc on defense and run when they can, and it just creates a style that's fun and exciting to watch, and the fans just really get into it. And if Auburn can get on a run, when they get on some runs, the crowd just goes crazy, and it just becomes a tough place to play. So I mean, they had a 28 game home win streak last year, going into last year's snap. Now they're at 15 again in a row. So it's just a place they're comfortable in. The crowd feeds off it. They feed off each other. They play off of one another, and it's a tough place to go in there and beat them and try to hold them down from going on those runs.
Justin, Chris Clark here. Thanks for joining us. So I want to go to the tempo aspect of this game because I was reading this morning on auburnlive.com. You had a great notebook, basically, with a lot of stats, analytics, insight into this game. Really good read for everyone to go check out. But you noted, Auburn's tempo under Bruce Pearl. They like to run. On the other side of that is South Carolina, who definitely wants to slow down the tempo. You noted that Evamia's analytics has South Carolina number 355 nationally in tempo. So what is it very, very important to Auburn's success from what you've seen this season to be able to push tempo and play fast and get their opponents into that type of game?
I would say what's important for Auburn is to create turnovers on the defensive end and blocks and steals. Auburn wants to play fast to some degree. They're not the fastest team in the country by any means. If you go look at tempo the other way, I don't even know if Auburn's in the top. I don't know. I'd have to go find them, top 30, 40. They're not necessarily a team that wants to blitz down there like Alabama, let's say, and shoot the ball within the first 10 seconds. That's not necessarily Auburn, but they do want to get out and run. They do want to try to take advantage of some early looks in the shot clock. But more importantly, they have to create turnovers and get blocks and steals and then turn that into some fast break opportunities. They definitely want to run fast break wise. They don't necessarily want to go down there and shoot within the first 10 seconds. So it's a little bit of both. But the way South Carolina plays, they slow the game down so much. Combine that with a physical team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes, a long team, and it's the kind of team that can cause Auburn problems. I mean, in years past, this South Carolina, the way that they're sort of built, the way they play, is the type of team that can beat Auburn, that can cause them issues. It's why Texas A&M has had success against Auburn over the last handful of years. They do the similar stuff, slow it down. They play good defense. They're physical. That game earlier in the year, Auburn beat them 66-55. So it was kind of that it was a much slower paced game, lower scoring game for Auburn. So yeah, I think it's a good matchup for Carolina. I think it's a challenging matchup for Auburn. At home, I think Auburn will be able to go on some runs, but I do think that matchup wise, Carolina's tempo and the way they sort of go about things is a good way to try to slow Auburn down and match up against them. Limit the runs, limit the energy, things like that.
We're joined by Justin Hokinson, Auburn Live on the On3 site. Go check it out for the Auburn side of this game. I tell you, Justin, this is honestly probably from a South Carolina fan perspective, one of the biggest basketball games South Carolina has had in quite some time. Lots of excitement here about this game. And I was just curious, a lot of Gamecock fans have started to even watch Auburn this past week against Florida. But for maybe people who haven't really tuned in that just know, hey, this is a good Auburn basketball program, but haven't watched a ton of them this year, who are maybe just from a big picture context or in the context of this game, who are a couple of key players for Auburn that South Carolina fans should maybe have their eyes on tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Janai Broome and Jalen Williams, Auburn's frontline guys. At home, those guys are fantastic. Jalen has had some struggles over the years on the road and big games on the road, but at home, he's generally really good. So it starts with those two guys. Janai's your center at 6'10", and Jalen's the forward. Those guys combined for 50 points against Alabama a week ago. And so when they're on, they're tough. They're both left-handed guys. They're good around the basket, good touch. Jalen can step out and shoot the three. They're both really good passers, despite being frontline guys. And so the offense pretty much is going to run through them to some degree every time down the court. They're going to be involved. And so, like I said, at home, they're probably averaging, they're probably combining for about 34, 35 points a game or something like that at home. So that's where it starts. And then I think you move to, I think you keep an eye on Trey Donaldson, who has moved into the starting point guard role over the last 4 games. Aiden Holloway, the former McDonald's All-American, started all year. Aiden's really struggled. He's struggled shooting. He's not shooting the ball well. So now he's coming off the bench. Trey Donaldson, who's a sophomore, is in that point guard role. He's played fairly well, minus at Florida, where everybody basically played poorly. But Trey's played pretty well as a tough physical point guard. And he's done well at home. And then you look at somebody like Chad Baker-Mazzaro, who comes off the bench. He's probably Auburn's best 3-man, but he comes off the bench, because Auburn, Chris Moore starts. He's got a lot of experience. Chad Baker is kind of that energy guy off the bench. He's probably the better 3, but he comes off the bench. He's probably the 3rd most valuable player on the team coming off the bench. He's a guy that probably averages about 9 and 4, but he does everything. He can assist. He can rebound. He'll draw some fouls. And so he's probably another guy that you watch coming off the bench. And then past that, it's just sort of a flurry of players. I mean, they play 10 guys. So whether it's Denver Jones at the 2, Dylan Cardwell comes off the bench as a center, they've basically got 2 of everything. They got 2 true point guards, 2 true shooting guards, 2 true 3, 4, and 5 that they can come off the bench. They're not really mixing and matching in terms of putting a guy out of a position. They've got a true guy at all those positions too deep. So they'll run a lot of guys at you, but it's going to start with Janai and Jalen. When Jalen doesn't play well, Auburn doesn't play well. When you go back this year, last year, you look at Jalen Williams, the games where he struggles, Auburn struggles. He didn't play well at Florida. He didn't play well at App State. He didn't play well at Alabama. I mean, all these games Auburn lost. Janai, they can win. Janai can score and they can still lose. Jalen's sort of the guy that when he doesn't play well, they don't win. It's tough to overcome. So I would start with the front line. I think the front line is really, really good. I think everything else, it's sort of a sum of parts. It's not one great individual. It has to be a sum of the whole for Auburn to succeed and play well.
Well, hey, Justin, we appreciate your insight. We're excited to see what happens. Should be a good matchup tonight out there in Auburn.
Yeah, should be a really good one, man. It's gonna be a good one.
Absolutely. Again, that's Justin Hokinson from Auburn Live, Auburn's on 3 site. He mentions all those guys.
All right, guys. Yeah, Justin Hokinson, Auburn Live on 3 site. Go check him out. If you're, by the way, one huge advantage, if you're a Gamecock Central subscriber, you can see all the content from all the other sites. And we don't have a site for every single team South Carolina may play, but for the most part, you will have a fan site for most of those teams, especially the in-conference teams. And they're, like Chris was talking about in that interview, there's a really nice preview that has some depth to it, that has some analysis to it sort of giving you a little bit of the Auburn side on this thing. And Chris, I got to say, man, I think that point about the tempo and sort of which team can dictate, and as Justin said, not that Auburn is necessarily going to be Alabama, like they're just going to run, but comparatively to South Carolina, and I would throw in that nugget about just how good they are at home. South Carolina, because of the way they kind of slow things down and are so good in like half-court offense, I feel like by slowing things down, by not turning the by not turning the basketball over very often. Sorry, guys, football first here. They just don't really allow teams to go on these big, high-energy runs. And that's, of course, how you get an opposing crowd into the game, is you can kind of feel it crescendo and sort of build as a team sort of has a couple of those high-flying moments. And so for South Carolina tonight, and really for Auburn from their side, it's kind of going to be about which of these teams can dictate how this game is played. I think South Carolina, if they're hitting shots, has a style that actually could give Auburn some trouble tonight.
Yeah, and I'm going to steal a couple more things from Justin because he kind of had some statistics that perfectly illustrate your point. You know, you pointed out in that interview that style South Carolina plays, A&M plays kind of similar, and that gave them some problems. Of course, you don't want to just give problems. You want to win this game. So here's one actually from that same notebook, Wes. You're talking about the scoring runs, right? Auburn wants to, cause havoc, cause chaos defensively. They want to cause turnovers and then get out and run. Auburn is top 10 in the country. They're number 9, in fact, in scoring runs of 10 or better. So a 10-0 scoring run, a 12-0 scoring run, 10-0 or better. They're number 9 in the country. They've got 23 of them. That's pretty good. South Carolina's only given up, to your point, 6 of those all year. Auburn has 23. So, it's opposing styles, right? Auburn, they cause havoc defensively. They get out and run. They hit shots. They get transition buckets. That's their game. That's their hallmark. That's what they want to do. That's what they've typically done. That's why they're so good. South Carolina, one of the reasons that they're so good, as you pointed out, is because they were able to turn the games into more of a slog for the other team, play really, really good defense. They don't give up 80 points a game. They haven't given that up all year. And then they're going to go down. They're going to play half-court offense, take time off the clock, take care of the basketball, and try to get good shots. And like you said, man, because of their style, if they're able to play that great defense, which is normally that's what you're able to be more consistent at in the game of basketball. There are times where your shot isn't falling as much, but what can you be consistent at? Your defense, your effort, your rebounding, and then the way you play the game. That's why when South Carolina can hit their shots from outside, especially, they're very tough to beat. And so it's going to be very interesting with these two teams that have kind of differing styles. What gives? Something has to give in this game.
Yeah, and I think, man, the difference we've seen for South Carolina this year, maybe compared to some of their teams in the last decade or so, it's in some ways that 20 team too, it broke the mold a little bit. On it, not only play strong defense, but they do have shooters and they can score the basketball. And ultimately, I don't think you're going to go to Auburn and win a game unless your offense is playing pretty well too. Like they're going to have to hit some shots in this game. I don't think they can just grind it out and win. It ain't going to be 56-54. Like you're going to have to put up some points in this game. But I think to his point, let's say Texas A&M, that's a game Auburn won. They won 66-55. So that was an absolute just slugfest, grind it out. And you look at some of their other scores, man. I mean, they scored 93 against LSU. 99 against Alabama. Now, like almost half those, I think, were on the free throw line. So that was a different type of just slow-paced slugfest. 91 against Ole Miss, and several other games, 81, 82, and 80 against Vandy, 12. So, if Auburn does what they wanted and turns it, the 80s, I don't think South Carolina is going to have much of a chance to win this game. Now, the good thing is South Carolina has done a fantastic job of keeping teams below their usual averages for a season. So to me, I kind of look, can South Carolina hold to maybe that low 70 or even high 60s mark? If that happens, then you're probably, much like that Tennessee game, you're looking at the final 4 or 5 minutes of the game saying South Carolina chance to go pull out a big win.
Yeah, and I think that's key. I keep drawing the comparison between this game and the Tennessee game because I do feel like there's some similarities as far as how difficult those places are to play, the talent levels of both of those teams, and some of the challenges that they present. And South Carolina just constantly just weathered the storm at Tennessee. They constantly made big plays, hit big shots, and then when it got down to the end of the game, they were in range to go home with a win. Right? They were up. Tennessee kind of made their runs, and they were able to stymie them. And I think that's the goal here. If Auburn hits some shots, if they get those transition buckets, if they're able to take South Carolina out of the game that South Carolina has played for almost the entirety of the season, that's when the points can come. That's when Neville Arena is going to get really loud, and it's going to become more and more difficult. And so if you're the Gamecocks, I think you just have to play this game in phases and pieces. And that's what they've been really good at under Lamont Paris is playing each possession is valuable offensively. Each possession is valuable defensively. Talon Cooper has just been so valuable to this team. There was some an analytic that I gave you earlier today, Wes, from Evan Mia on his analytics site for college basketball. And Talon Cooper is the guy that his computer system, rated as the most important player to this Carolina team. And I think that's because he perfectly embodies the style of basketball that they play, right? Play great defense, slow things down, get a good shot, value the basketball. And that'll be critical again tonight, obviously.
Yeah, they just work the ball around so well, man. It's beautiful to watch. I think a lot of times you think of teams that slow the basketball down in terms of like, well, they're not on offense. And I think efficiency wise, in terms of just taking advantage of their opportunities on offense, this team, like this year, they tend to get some pretty good looks. They get good shots at the basket. It's just they're not going to take as many as other teams are because they aren't looking. So I would say as far as their half court basketball, it's not overly complicated, but they just do such a good job of sharing the ball. And I thought that was interesting. Justin talking about this Auburn team is kind of more than they are individually. Like it's a sum of the parts type team this year. I would say that would definitely be the case for South Carolina as well. You have some guys, and you maybe have an emerging superstar potentially in CMB, Colin Murray-Boyles, but for the most part, this is a team that on any given night, it can be a different couple of guys to, kind of just not take over the game, but to pull a little bit extra weight and put them in a position to go win. So those are always fun because tonight we may crown you South Carolina hero.
Yeah, I mean, this game is who would have thought, Wes? You may say, all those people who call, like I've seen this a lot on social, all these people picking South Carolina at the bottom of the conference were idiots, whatever. And, you could have qualms, well, you should have picked them 10th instead of 14th. Dude, I don't know if anybody saying that was like, hey, in mid-February, South Carolina is going to be in range to win the conference. Like, come on. I don't think anybody would have picked that. I didn't pick. I have an easy cop out. I didn't pick the SEC basketball standings. I don't follow it closely enough to be able to do that. I did kind of like this team's experience, the guys that they brought in, and kind of the differing skill sets. But there were still plenty of questions about a team that, quite frankly, wasn't very good last year. And man, the new faces. I mean, credit to the guys. Credit to Lamont Paris. They've been outstanding, in every facet. And to have the opportunity to go out and, win this game tonight and possibly win this conference in year two, the turnaround from what we saw last year is pretty tremendous, no doubt.
Yeah, and I want to hit on a couple of those points, but first, I'm going to tell you about a couple of our other sponsors. First of all, it's our friend Andy Luedecke from My Perfect Franchise. Contact Andy today, 404-973-9901, or shoot him an email, andy@myperfectfranchise.net. You may be saying, Wes, what are you talking about? What is that? Andy is a franchise consultant. He's also so he's firsthand experience, but what he does is he helps people find franchises that will then fit those people's skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. The best part is his services are 100% free. He is here to help you if you have any questions about business ownership. So essentially, if you're someone who is looking to kind of leave the corporate rat race, maybe you're in a job you're not really necessarily that happy with, to live the American dream, or maybe you're just kind of looking to diversify, side hustle, build some wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy is going to help you get started with that big step into franchising. Again, services 100% free. And again, you can get more information at myperfectfranchise.net. Contact Andy today, 404-973-9901. And one of our other friends you need to call right now is our friends at Liberty Tax, 803-462-5576. Tax time is upon us. You're going to want somebody who can help walk you through this process. You're going to want somebody who has a ton of experience, which Larry's team does. And guess what? Why do it with a hardcore Gamecock as well? Support those who support the Gamecocks, much like what we tell you with Clint Hammond. Larry, a huge Gamecock fan, and has been in the tax game for quite some time. He wants to help you with your taxes and make it a very simple process for you. Again, 803-462-5576. Something struck me, Chris, when you were talking about kind of these newcomers and this team and our expectations. And I think any of us could have looked and be like, man, this Talon Cooper, this guy's pretty good. Like, he's had a pretty nice career. And we saw what Michi did last year, and he was a transfer at that time, year two in the program. You sat there and you said, man, this Miles Studi, this guy can shoot the basketball. Like, I kind of see what Lamont Paris is thinking as far as putting together some of the pieces. And did Colin Murray Boyles, and you were like, hey, these local guys, these like hoop heads do this stuff local, talk pretty good. And you fast forward to now, and you're like, did they just hit on every single evaluation from this entire class? I know there are a couple of freshmen that, we'll wait and see on. We'll see what happens down the road. But in terms of CMB, obviously, and Chris, in terms of their transfers, BJ Mack, they go get him. He's taken a step up as far as level of competition. All these guys they brought in, man, have been, I would dare say, not just what they thought they were, but possibly even more so.
Well, and I think that's where you credit the staff, right, for making those evaluations and then developing those guys. I mean, all those players, I think, have taken steps forward and grown their game, in some way. And also they've gelled together very well. It's a bunch of guys that all have different skill sets. Like all those players that you described, they all have very different skill sets that complement each other. And then a common thread is, of course, shooting, right? Like we've said this a bunch of times, whether on here, whether on the takeover hour, on the game. The things that they were missing last season, primarily, they're missing a lot, experience and shooting. Like those are the two biggest things you could point to. Last year, it had to be, you say this all the time, for them to be in a game or win a big game, it had to be a Michi go-off game. He makes a bunch of threes, etc. They needed more experience. They needed more shooting. And so now they brought in like those guys that you mentioned can all shoot. You know, Talon Cooper can shoot. BJ can shoot. Studi can shoot. Like they brought in guys that can shoot, can defend, and all have kind of other different things they can do. So they got more depth. You pair it with a great freshman who's continuing to come along, you know, in Colin Murray Boyles. It was just a fantastic class. And yeah, it's not too often that you really hit on all the guys. You know, even Stephen Clark, he's been supplanted by CMB, but he's helped this team. He's done some things for this team, and he's still there if they need him as well. So yeah, it's a good point. They did hit on everybody. And when you do that, that's a way you can pretty quickly turn it around.
Yeah, and you know, there's a couple. We'll see what happens with the Arden Conyers. I mean, I think Morris Ugasuk has already shown he's got some potential. Obviously, needs to gain some strength in the workout program. I like that pickup as well. You're starting to see a couple of their 2024s moving up in the recruiting rankings as well, and so see what they do in the portal. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Trey asking, guys, are we about the elephant in the room? Of course, Trey, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. But I have a different take on the elephant in the room. By the way, for those who didn't see it, you probably have by now. Ohio State men's basketball, they fired their coach. And as I think has been expected by many, that maybe not this particular situation, but many people, maybe Lamont Paris was going to be it of some this offseason. And some of your heavy hitters out there, make sure I credit the right one. I think it was Goodman. Yeah, Jeff Goodman. How about this for some irony? He said the two names to watch at Ohio State are Sean Miller and Lamont Paris.
That's crazy. Yeah.
You couldn't have written it better. But my opinion, when was the last time you had schools coming in trying to steal your men's basketball coach at South Carolina? And there was, I think Frank flirted with the teams in there.
There was a couple. Yeah.
With Frank, that was a complicated, the entire era. It was a complicated era.
Yeah.
And it went from teams flirting with Frank flirting with teams, then South Carolina wanting Frank to lead. You know, it was complicated. But right now, you are at a straight up, you're having a good enough season. You're having a good enough season that this high major program reportedly has your coach in their top two they're going to look at. That's a great thing, man. That's so much better than the alternative.
Yeah.
My buddies, like Gamecock fan buddies, it went from this time last year, hey, man, not sure about Lamont Paris. You know, we'll see what happens. Oh, God, somebody's going to steal from us. Like, what are we going to do? We're going to have to pay him this offseason. Okay. I'd much rather you be worried about that as a fan of your program than be worried about firing. Okay.
Yeah.
So to me, you know, we'll see what happens. I promise you, the people writing the checks at the University of South Carolina in the athletic department, they know if this continues the way it is, they're going to have to break out the checkbook. That's a fact at this point if it continues. But, dude, went out and got Paris a chance. He's going to at least listen and let you make your pitch to him, I would imagine. So I would just say, don't freak out over this. Enjoy this. Enjoy everything that's happening right now.
Yeah, Wes, are we in the territory where people are pre-mad about there not being like a contract extension, or pre-mad saying that you know how we talk about this? This is a theory of mine. It's not even a theory. People do it where they say, well, hey, if Ohio State ended up, and I don't know if, I'm sure he's under consideration, right? I don't know if he's number 2, number 12. He's an Ohio native. He's been in the Big Ten. I'm sure they'll consider him, right? There's no doubt. And any other school, any other major school that has an opening will probably go, man, look at what that guy's done at South Carolina in 2 years. He's really good. We should look at him. But I've already seen people kind of go, they probably won't pay him. But people still do this with football. South Carolina is extremely competitive with what they pay. They're an SEC school. They can pay. This is getting way too far ahead, but if Ohio State said, man, we really want to go get Lamont Paris, if it ended up happening, I highly doubt it's going to be because South Carolina goes, we're just not going to pay that, guys. I could be wrong, but I don't see that happening. I think people at South Carolina will do what it takes this offseason, and this is regardless of Ohio State showing interest or not. After a year like this, you get an extension. Saw somebody in comments ask, why there hadn't been an extension yet. You remember his initial contract at South Carolina was a 5-year deal. I think $12 million. After year one, you probably weren't going to give an extension at year one. There's no reason to do it from a timing standpoint. And frankly, they didn't have a good year. And not that he was expecting, hey, you need to go out and go win the SEC in year one. Nobody thought that. Year two, if there's progress made, that's generally a time where you see a contract extension. Well, they've made more than progress. They've been really, really good. And so I think regardless of the Ohio State picture, this is something that's being discussed, I'm sure. And, you and I know we'll dig into it a little bit more to kind of see where things are at. This is something we'll probably be tracking in terms of a new contract for Lamont Paris. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. By the way, y'all apologize if my side's been choppy. I've been getting the notification that connection is unstable. I'm going to have to look into that. Hopefully. So question for future reference. When it's choppy on my end, is it just the video? Like, does the audio still, is it fine or choppy? So
it's both.
Gosh, that's not good. That sucks. Yeah. Sorry, y'all. On my end, I can't see it. It all looks normal except for that little notification. So I can never tell. But yeah, Tay says audio and video. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I got to look into some things on that. But let's see. I think we hit most everything I wanted to hit on anyway, Chris. You got any final thoughts on the game, man?
No, looking forward to it, man. Valentine's date night, right? Auburn, South Carolina. Gonna be good stuff.
Yeah, I hope y'all planned well. Hopefully y'all planned your Valentine's dinners for earlier, and then you can watch the game at 8:30. We'll all watch it together, and then we'll talk about it later on this week. All right, y'all. Appreciate you. Appreciate y'all hanging in. Appreciate y'all hanging in with the issues. And if you couldn't hear anything, check it out on the podcast platform. It'll be posted a little bit later on. But for Chris, I'm Wes. We're going out of here. And shout out to our sponsors as well. Appreciate y'all making the show possible. We'll talk to y'all soon.